Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dadziner podcast. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Swartz. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and why don't you tell folks a little bit about where you're from, a little bit about your family, and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm in northeastern Indiana, and I'm a different kind of graphic designer. Still all the same principles, but I specialize in letterpress design and printing. And letterpress design printing is the antique method we used for like 500 years since Gutenberg, basically until the 1990s when the Macintosh kind of took over with desktop publishing and all that jazz. But I do everything old school, old presses and old movable wood type, and very analog. So it's closer to like printmaking art, but typographically like inclined. And so I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I get the kids off to school in the morning, and then I spend my days designing and letterpress printing and working with paper and hanging out with my two boys when they come home and doing dinner and all that kind of good stuff and doing the family thing and the art thing. So that's me.
And the wood type, is that stuff that you've collected over time? Do you create any of your own?
Yeah.
Like, what's the deal there?
So most of it I collect. And so that's, looking on eBay and Etsy, but those prices can be kind of high sometimes. So there's some good networking that happens within kind of the letterpress community. So you hear about things closing, or people hear about you and they're like, oh, I had this stuff in my attic. Do you want it? And almost universally, every time you get it, it's incomplete fonts. So you're supposed to have a correct distribution of letters. So like 3A's, 2B's, 4E's, whatever this chart is. And that's the greatest likelihood of setting the words and the phrases that you want. But a lot of times they're not all there. They've been lost or damaged or split up, or crafters have taken them and, done whatever. So there's a fair amount of like, hide and seek going on, trying to find these other pieces all over the place. And sometimes you're, paying too much. Sometimes I carve things myself out of linoleum. I'll trace a character or find a historic specimen to fill in a gap. And then I have a laser engraver I got through a nice grant from the Indiana Arts Commission. And so I can make blocks, and I'll show you one here in a bit to do that as well. So I most of it's antique. I like using the antique stuff because it has more character to it. When I make things new from linoleum or a laser engraving, it can be really, really crisp and perfect, but it doesn't have those little scratches from 50 years of use and the little nicks where it got dropped and, the edges that aren't quite there. So, I really get into the whole perfectly imperfect mentality. Yeah. And I think the quality of the type goes along with that. And it's a reminder that it's an analog process too. It's not crisp and clean, like a silk screen print could be, or a digital print, or all that. So yeah.
I struggle with that. My wife and I, both artists, but very different.
Oh yeah.
And she was painting the top of the stairwell, kind of a gridded, multiple color type thing. And she started with painter's tape and like laid it out and got, I don't know, a little bit of the way in and said, this isn't going to work. So she just drew pencil lines and hand did it. And one of our friends saw that she was doing this and he said, yes, leave that humanity into it. Yeah. And I'm like, the lines aren't crisp.
Yeah.
So,
I think there is so much to that. I talk about this a lot, but I think especially as digital designers, our perfectionism can take over because we can infinitely nudge and rotate and all the, the version histories and all this kind of stuff. And you can kind of drive yourself crazy, but at the same time, you remove the humanity. There's nothing to remind you it was made by a person and it was made by something that's imperfect. And I think imperfect work like allows us to be imperfect, right? It takes the pressure off as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's a really good perspective. And so how long ago did you make the switch from being in-house? And were you always a stay-at-home dad, or these switches happen at the same time?
So this whole thing started in 2020. I got let go from my other position. And so we needed to find a new course. And this had been on my mind for a while, and I'd kind of had a growing interest in it. I was teaching at the time, and I was also freelancing as mostly an illustrator, some design work. And, after doing illustration for almost 20 years, maybe, it was kind of like, it was maybe a time for a switch. It was a chance to kind of look over what I'd done and what I wanted to do next with my time. And really, I mean, 2020 was a good time for a lot of people to kind of reassess life and think about their
Mm-hmm.
goals and their values. And it was a good time to pause and think about that. And I love illustration still. I love to draw, and I draw with my kids. But it kind of felt like time for a shift, and it felt like the doors were leading in a different direction. And so I kind of started doing this. But everything I was doing beforehand, plays into this. It's still color, it's
Mm-hmm.
still design, it's still composition, it's still arrangement and typography and all that kind of stuff. It's just, my illustration work was very heavy digital. It was vector, and then I did a MFA, and I started doing the same style, but in paint and like marker and gouache and all these kinds of things. And then there was this handmade thing going on, and I was getting more into like charcoal drawing. And so like there was this kind of like imperfection route already occurring. And I was also finding out that I was really like into fonts. I was a total geek about that, and like finding all the differences and learning the history and about the makers. And so when this moment happened, I was like, well, I like imperfect things, and I like printing, and I like fonts. So let's work with fonts for real instead of as digital files. So yeah.
So the switch happened in 2020, and I'm assuming school was different for the kids too back then. But was your wife working full time, or did you make this shift because you had this in the house?
So she had taken kind of a bit of a sabbatical, if you want to call that. We'd had
Mm-hmm.
another little one, and she was kind of taking care of him more at the house, and so I was the one working full time. But my schedule was flexible enough that I was home quite a bit to
Yeah.
not be the full time carer, but I was around, and I could work at home and stuff even before the pandemic. So I was present. But when the 2020 happened, I wasn't able to land something, and we were kind of running out of options. So we had to move. We didn't lose the place. We decided to transition, and so we moved back kind of to the area I grew up in Indiana. And she was able to get a teaching position again because she's in education. She's a math teacher. So she's now the full time person, and I'm running the full time stuff at home. So it was a shift in my career, and it was a shift in our home and family life and responsibilities. And I think that was rough for the kids getting started, right?
Mm.
I mean, I'm around. Obviously, I'm a dad, but all the responsibilities kind of went on their head for the kids. So it was a shift in that, and then shifting schools for the kids and locations and all that. 2020 was a big year for us. So
Yeah. Yeah. And now after, I mean, going through it for a couple years, do you enjoy this little bit of a change of pace for yourself? Especially, work used to be, oh, okay, 9 to 5 ish or whatever that would be. You have flexibility within that, but now you get them off to school and then you're with them after school. So you
mhm.
have a shorter amount of time in the middle of the day to kind of,
Yeah,
go out to your studio. What has that shift been like? Has it been peaceful? Has it been tough?
yeah. It's actually maybe a little bit better than when they were younger because now the hours are more regimented. That I
Mm,
know at a certain hour they have to be at school, and they're always coming home at a certain amount of time. So I've got this block of time. Whereas before, when like one kid's at school and then another's in preschool, or another is
yeah.
I had a babysitter for a couple hours or whatever. There's this kind of shifting schedule that's different every day,
Yeah.
and so you're always like, the calendar's all over the place. But this is a little more regimented, which is nice. Like I know
Yeah.
that I've got my 7 hours, 6 hours, or whatever that I can rock and roll. And now that we're closer to family, that's really helpful too because I have them to lean on grandparents, or folks at church or whatever, if need be.
That's cool. You had mentioned earlier that typography and color and all of these things from your former career
Hmm.
now play into this.
Yeah,
And honestly, it's one of the things that caught my attention when I started to see your stuff pop up online was your color theory and obviously the type
yeah,
because it's historic, right? But there's two projects that color kind of really stands out and I'd love to hear you
yeah,
talk about both of them. And the first one is these mindfulness calendars. And then the second one I think is on press now. So let's
yeah,
start with the the mindfulness
yeah,
calendars
yeah.
first. Uh,
So
tell us a little bit about like the background of those and what are they for? What do they do?
so this is one of my favorite projects. I started it 3 years ago, maybe four. Um, I guess the first one was for 2021. So I guess this is the fourth year doing it. And that was a total failure. Like hardly anybody bought them. But I had this idea that there was something to it, and it changes every year. This right there, that's actually the 2024 one. This is the 2025 one. So if you can see this here. So I kind of went a little crazy this year. Basically, it's 12 different shapes. And over here I had 12
Yeah.
different numbers, right? And so it comes with a set of stickers. And then every month you get to cover up one of these. And you can do them in order, or you can make designs as you go, or do it backwards, whatever you want to. But the idea is to think about your year more as a whole. And as you put those transparent like blue dots on, you start seeing like the year being consumed or the year being used up. And for me, it was kind of fun because it's like an interactive art calendar. But at the same time, it really got me thinking more about, what am I doing with these 30 days? Like, am I earning this sticker? Am I being a good steward of the time that I've been given? And it was very, like, in a positive way, encouraging for me, because before I was kind of, I mean, a career shift, everything shifted a little bit, kind of drifting, not having the regimented schedule that was there for me beforehand, where I'm kind of answering to other people's calendars. And now it's like, you're on your own. How do you use your time? What does good productivity look like? And this was a really good
Mm-hmm.
thing to like keep me on track. And I love
Yeah.
doing it now, and other people enjoy them. And I made them in two sizes, so you can get a small one or you can get a big one. But you know, a lot of what I'm trying to do is like encourage good thinking for mostly other creatives. Like a lot of designers are, and other artists are the people buying my stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this goes into it. This is just another kind of like good thinking, I hope, right? To encourage
Yeah.
other creatives to use their time well and think about their year differently. So, yeah,
Yeah, and the shapes that you decided to go with this year's, are those glyphs from a collection of wood type, or did you kind of make those on your own?
that's a great question. Most of those are from a set called Form Pattern from another designer. His name is Donald Turallo. So you can look him up, and you can get that in wood type, or you can get the digital font as well. And he
Oh,
designs
cool.
other fonts that you can pick up. He does some really beautiful stuff. So I guess his. I think the star is not his, and there's a triangle that aren't those. The star and the triangle are from Virgin Wood Type. But every
Okay.
year I've been doing the numbers. This year I was just feeling like, we're already kind of doing an abstract calendar. Let's make it even more abstract. And
Yeah.
yeah, people have dug it, so it's good.
I love the freeform nature of it too, because I can see different types of brains being like, I have to go across the top and then go down to the next row. And
Yeah.
then I could see someone just being chaotic and just slapping one on like the ninth one for January. And I'm
Yes.
going to be like, no.
There's a Threads account that does something similar. They just use like a set of different emoticons or symbols, and they show up. Have you seen this one? It's called percentage of the year or something like it. And it's a
No.
bar, and then it fills up so much of it with like a gray space, and it announces the
Okay.
percentage like, once a week or something. And that is also a good motivator. Maybe
Yeah.
I need to do one with
Yeah.
365 stickers, and every day you're watching your time leak away.
Yeah. There's oh, I am going to forget who it is. I'll put it in the show notes when I recall, but he has a life calendar, and every block is a day,
Mm-hmm.
and it's representative of around 85 to 90 years of blocks.
Oh
And
wow.
so you can kind of fill in of like how much of your life
Oh
is
my gosh.
has been uh, consumed. And it really, the purpose is not to freak you out. It's
Yeah,
to
yeah.
really ground you in that life is short,
Mm-hmm.
and we are only here for a very brief amount of time.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like you were saying, how are you being a good steward of the time that you have and the gifts and talents you have?
At least maybe I'm just seeing it more because of the algorithm. But these posts or these reels that talk about how much time we have as parents with our kids, like
Yeah.
something like 80% of the time with our kids is over by the time they graduate from high school or something like that. And that can be really weighty, but at the same time, like a really good encouragement to use this time and put your phone down and not work so much, because like this season is going to be gone. And I sound like an old guy saying that, but man, it is going fast. And
Yeah.
yeah, looking at graduation here
Yeah.
in a few years, and it's crazy.
My wife and I were driving this weekend, and I was talking about how long childhood felt.
Oh yeah.
The amount of time it felt that went by, leading up to Christmas, or until I could drive, or until I graduated high school, or until
Mm-hmm.
I could like do all of these things felt like eternity. And now it's it feels like this year just flew by.
Yeah.
First year doing full-time freelance is about 40 days away from being over, and I'm just blown away that that's the case. I actually announced this day last year that I was going out on my own in January,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, how was that a year ago? And so it just flies by.
It does. I mean, remember
um
summer breaks when you were a kid?
yeah, it was so long.
Oh my goodness. It's like you were just, it was forever. You didn't even have to think about the fall semester coming. It was just summer for as far as your mind's eye could see. And man,
Yep.
I wish I could be there again. That was good. You
Yeah.
know, now it's always like,
Yeah.
I got emails on Monday. It's coming. I got to
Yeah.
do it.
Yep. Yep. The other project I wanted to talk about, you're doing a series right now of Advent words,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
term, that you've been posting some teasers on Threads, some
Mm-hmm.
polls of colorways and different things like
Yeah.
that, which I wish you could have done all the colorways because they were all great,
Oh, I know.
which shows that you have color theory skills. But yeah, tell us a little bit about these, and what are you even calling them?
So I always like to do a set of Christmas prints every year, or something to kind of celebrate the season because I love Christmas. And unfortunately, though, I always want to be like in the right state of mind. Like I want to feel like we're at least approaching Christmas. I don't like doing it in September, which is when I should be doing it. But I found some of this type, and once I got this, I was like, I gotta make something. So this is called Abby Text, and so this is an H and an N and an E, and they're calligraphy based. They're very antique, and I love the design. I was like, well, I got to make something now. So I started hunting around, and I found an old file online, a specimen of what was called a Flemish border. So I'm assuming that's the name of it, but I don't know who designed it. And I did a laser engraving and built a block that's just MDF that's been adhered to 1/4 inch plywood that I burned out. Then I finished printing the last of the 3 colors last night at like 9:30, and there's a blue and a yellow ochre and this kind of green gold. It's a little more goldish on my end than yours, but so now there'll be type on the inside, and I think the words I'm going to do are like hope and Noel and joy, and then there'll be like a little star on both ends of it, and that color shifts based on the design. And so I'm pretty pumped about those. It's a bit of a logistical game doing this because you're running like 180 of these things across like all these different color combinations. So you're shifting inks and what's on the press a little bit. So you just got to keep straight what you're doing and keep good notes as you go, because there is no undo button in this process. Let me tell you what, if you make a move, you are stuck with it. So I always print overage,
Yeah.
so that I have some margin for error. But I'm hoping today I'm going to recarve the stars. I'm going to do it by hand instead by laser, but I think I'm going to start running the type for at least one of them today.
Yeah. Since you've been posting, I've been just waiting, and I'm going to place an order for those, the calendar, like a whole bunch of stuff at once, so that it can all ship together.
Yeah. It's been fun seeing people get involved, because part of what I want to do is teach people about this and the history of design and like
Yeah.
a respect for like where we came from. But I did a poll with all those different color combinations you were talking about, and it was really cool to see how many people
Yeah.
jumped in and see all the results. Because I mean, I think I said in the poll or the post, like, you all are the ones that are buying these. I want you to enjoy it. I can be flexible about
Right.
color. I kind of threw out some ideas, but people got pretty excited, and some pretty clear winners I thought was interesting with the colors. It was much wider spread than I thought it would be. So, but yeah, it'd be fun.
Interesting. And are those colors you're mixing yourself, or do you have those inks, or search for those inks and then just use them?
Usually I'm mixing my own. Of those 3, the yellow ochre was one that comes straight out of the tube because that's kind of a stock color, but the other 2 were mixed, and all of the interiors will have to be mixed. The inks that I use, there's only a few colors. I don't know if you can see the whole board back there.
Yeah.
I've got most of them. So it's just, it's probably not economical for them to make tons and tons of different colors when they know that people can just mix their own. So Fortunately, I was a painter for a
Yeah.
little while,
And are
so
you?
I know how to mix color.
Oh, nice. If you don't mix enough, like how do you estimate how much ink
Oh
you're going to
yeah,
need for a run?
that's always a big guessing game, and I always try to guess more than less. But I've been off before, and mixing the exact same color can be difficult. I tend to keep mental notes, or sometimes I'll write things down about what colors I was using. But some letterpress people are really, really good at mixing colors, and they have Pantone guides, and they can do it all by weight and get like exactly on. I'm a little more fine arty, so I'm kind of eyeballing it, and every once in a while I've had to remix to match, and that's quite the game.
I would imagine it matters mostly if it's on the same print,
Yeah.
right? If the color is different between one
Yes.
print and a second print, it may not matter as much
Yeah.
because they're not,
Yeah. It doesn't.
they might go to different
And I
people.
want to get close enough because I sell a lot of these on Etsy, and so I want the listing
Hmm.
photos to be really close to what it is they're actually getting, right? So
Yeah.
I'll just keep mixing, and I've wasted quite a bit of ink before, but it is what it is. It's
Right.
It's part of the privilege, if you want to say it like that, right? The hardship is having to match
Yeah.
ink, but the privilege is that you get to mix ink and you get to do letterpress and you have people that want your things. So just part of the process.
Do you ever do custom like wedding invites or anything like that, or is it
No.
mainly
Um,
show like
yeah,
your own
it's
stuff?
almost my own stuff, and I don't do the wedding thing for a couple of reasons. One, because a lot of that would require small metal type, and I have no metal type. Everything I deal with is large and wood. I also don't have any of the resources to do like duplexing or folding or all that kind of stuff. So it all had to be hand done. And that's so much work and so much extra outside of what I do. I don't want to do that. But also, I don't want the stress of doing weddings. That's a really important day for people. And I don't want to be the one carrying the ball for them and drop it. Right. So I'd rather just do this thing. Now I
Yeah.
do some custom work for like organizations, people that want to buy like prints. So like I did this print here for UCDA, and this was for all their members. But it's my design. It's more fine arty. They just, we did a digital version and they approved it, and minor edits. But it was still kind of like my fine art design, then given to all of their people.
Yeah.
And I'm doing, another one for like a historic building in northern Indiana right now. That's going to be kind of like I don't know the real purpose, but probably like a sales in their gift shop or something like that. Probably raises money for the building and that kind of thing, and then gets their name out. And so I do that kind of stuff. Things that are featuring Indiana, small businesses, small towns, focusing on history or focusing on creation. Those are kind of like those five things that I really am interested in doing custom work for. But I don't do a lot of it. Most of it's my own stuff.
And are the boys interested at all in doing this? Do they ever come out and print with
Yeah,
you, or
the
not really?
youngest does not as much anymore. This last
Okay.
year, his interests have been shifting, but I've had him sort type before, re-alphabetize things, and they go back into the drawers. Or the youngest would help me ink things, like actually prints that I would send out sometimes. And I've done some Lego printing things with groups the kids are in, and they've enjoyed that kind of thing.
Oh,
But
cool.
both of them are creative. The eldest isn't into this as much anymore. He's kind of getting bored with dad, and that's okay. But he likes to build things. He's a very dimensional thinker, but he's also started getting into like cartooning lately, and that's fun to see all that stuff happening. And I hope that I don't care if they do this. I don't care if they do design. I would just like them to at least entertain creativity in their life, even if it's not their career. So I'm just happy if they're
Mhm.
doing anything that's you know nonlinear.
Very cool. Well, it's already at that point in the show where I ask the
Yeah.
questions that I ask every guest towards the end, which is what has been your biggest parenting success, and what has been your greatest parenting either failure or learning?
Tough questions. I think my biggest success is probably passing on a love of like reading to my kids. Like I really, really enjoy seeing how much they love reading and how much they love going to the library. It's like a treat for them. I remember my eldest when he was a little bit younger, man, it was like going to Legoland or something. When you go to the library, he would be like so jazzed to go get new stories and new books. And they have Kindles that they read on because we go through the library stack so fast. And I think reading involves a different kind of creativity. And so I love seeing that. It's taking other people's thoughts and like reinterpreting them in your mind and figuring out ideas or stories and characters. And so I really like seeing that. I think that's probably my biggest win. Um, as well as, reading is a great indicator of future success. It opens so many doors for them
Mm-hmm.
to do things, to learn stuff on their own, to experience the world without having to experience the world, right? Like you can get outside of your circle through a book. And I think that's pretty awesome. My biggest failure, and it's something I'm still working on, and it was maybe more so when they were younger, but trying to prioritize them over work, and especially work through devices. I think that's my biggest failure. Especially when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger, I would work at home sometimes, and I think it was really difficult for them to understand, when they're just toddlers or a little older, that part being a dad, being a provider in the family requires that I have to do work things. So even though I'm not at an office, I'm at a home, I still have to answer emails when they come through, right? There's still people that are needing the information that I have, or I got to get ready for something, and I need to lock myself in the office for an hour or so. And it's not saying no to them. It's like this other way of saying yes to them because I have this job that has some flexibility. I can be around, right? But I think it was difficult. And now it's, phones, and I do a lot of social media stuff. And so trying to put the phone down and turn off notifications and like be fully present with them, I think that's a continual journey. And I think, in this day and age, I think a lot of us deal with it too, because those devices and those networks can be so demanding. And I don't know if in your
Mm-hmm.
world, you're on your own, I'm on my own too. So there's this sense of urgency anytime a message comes through. You're like, I do not want to miss this, or I want to pay attention to this customer or this potential audience member. And that's all well and good, but I think we put way too much pressure on ourselves to respond immediately and quickly. And we need to be present with the people we're with and put the things down. And, when a kid comes into the office, swivel the chair around, put everything down, focus on that conversation, make sure it's all good and well and done and they're happy and they leave. And then I can go back to this other thing because money is important, right? But the people you're dealing with, they are not the ones whose lives you're in charge of, right? Who are the ones you've been given as a gift to like raise right. And so just flipping those priorities. So, but it's a learning process and they're getting old enough
Yeah.
now. They're starting to get devices. So I'm trying to teach them how to do this well, how to be present. And, of course, I see all my failings because they act the way that I do. So they do certain things that I do. I'm like, oh, I should have nipped that in the bud earlier, but that's okay. That's all right.
I think that's my biggest realization is that I want to at some point the girls are going to have
Yeah.
devices, right? And I want them to steward them well. And if they steward it anything like I do, that's not well. And so I have to begin to change my behaviors now so that I'm setting an example that I would want
Yeah.
them to follow. Otherwise, there won't be any noise in our house whatsoever because everyone will
I know,
just be
just
staring
staring
at
at
their
the
phone.
screen the whole time. Yeah. And I see it happening in moments,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, man, this is not the family that I want us to evolve into. So we got to pay attention to our path and be intentional. And I know it changes for every life stage, right? The way we deal with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, that's what I think it's important for
Yeah.
a lot of dads, raising kids is being present.
Well, I really appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on, sharing about your family, sharing about your work. If folks want to find you
Hmm.
online or want to shop your
Yeah.
prints, where can they do that?
I'm active on the Meta platforms. So I'm on Instagram, HoosierType.co. Same HoosierType.co on Threads and Facebook, Hoosier Type Company. So you can follow me on all three of those and really get sick of how much I post. But I try to put, fairly different things on the three platforms. And then I have an Etsy shop under Hoosier Type Company, and you can pick up all that stuff, and everything ships out the next business day. And so that's lots of fun. So look me up and get something cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Daniel, for coming on and for
Yeah,
sharing with
thanks for
us.
having me. This is fun.